Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a tier list on zero mana cards in Magic the Gathering. So, my last videos were my first ones with my webcam, and I got some really helpful feedback on some clicking habits and also on how to fix my audio. So, thank you so much for those comments. They really help me make my content better. Today I've gathered the 50 ish cards in Magic that have a converted mana cost of zero, and I'm going to be putting them in a tier list. Now, a couple disclaimers. I did not include any X spells, so if the spell costs X, double X, or triple X, it is not on here, so you won't see Walking Ballista or Astral Cornucopia or any of those. Um, Second note, I didn't include any of the uncards like Ashnod's Coupon, Blacker Lotus. There's about six or eight of those. So I didn't include those. And lastly, something I value very heavily in any tier lists that I make is that it has a nice bell curve. I think this one is going to not have that because there's going to be a large stack of cards in S just because there are five of the original Moxen. But I'm going to work hard to make it as close to a bell curve as possible. So, with that out of the way, we're just going to jump into the rankings. Um, so, I think the best way to start out is with Black Lotus and just going ahead and tossing that in S tier. I think there's no argument that Black Lotus is not an S tier. It just makes three mana for zero. And in a similar vein, Mana Crypt. In my opinion, these are pretty replaceable on which is best. Black Lotus is probably better in constructed formats. Um, both of these are just insane. And then the last auto S tier that I think I just need to get out of the way before really jumping into the meat of this video is all five of the original Moxen. I talked about this in my Power Cube guide, but I think the order of Moxen goes something like Sapphire, Jet, Ruby, Pearl, Emerald. Green has Mana Dorks, blue has Tinker, black has Reanimator where you want mana early. Um, so I would say the top of S tier starts out looking something like this. So now we're on to the kind of more interesting to think and talk about cards. Um, Kicking us off, I'm going to start with Lotus Petal. So it's one third of a Black Lotus. You sack it for one mana. And this card sees play everywhere that it can see play, all the way up to CEDH. Um, I guess it doesn't see play in Vintage because you just get to play the normal Black Lotus. But card is still extremely powerful, um, especially when comparing to a lot of the other zero mana cards we're going to talk about. This is probably just a shoe in A tier. So yeah, moving on, we're going to talk about Chrome Mox. So Chrome Mox costs zero, and you imprint a card from your hand. So you go down an additional card, but then it's just another Mox. So it's worse than the original five Moxen. However, it still is just able to come in and tap for one or more colors because if you imprint a card that's multiple colors, it taps for both. Um, I think it is likely better than Lotus Petal. Um, it's probably S tier. Maybe I should have made an S plus just for these. Um, but it really is just about as good as it gets as far as fast mana. Um, if you haven't played with Chrome Mox, it's on Arena and Timeless. Timeless is kind of a mess right now, but Chrome Mox is super powerful. Moving on, I'm going to go to Mox Amber. We're just going to I have a spreadsheet that I'm looking at on the order that I want to talk about these cards in, and it has little cheat sheet on what they all do. So Mox Amber, it's zero, and it taps for a mana of any color among legendary creatures or planeswalkers you control. So when this was printed, people weren't super duper high on it, but recently with the printing of Tameo, a super playable one drop blue creature, Emery, this is good with. This was a part of the Breach combo in Modern, and it just keeps getting better and better over time. Um, I think it's probably today top of B tier in that it's not good in every single deck. It doesn't see play everywhere that it could see play. However, as Wizards continues to print more and more aggressively costed legends, Mox Amber will continue to get better. I could see, in 2, 3 years' time, Mox Amber being better than Chrome Mox. Might be crazy just because Chrome Mox you can use without having anything in play. Mox Amber, you always have to have something in play, but I do think that it's possible. Moving forward, we're going to talk about Mox Opal, uh, modern staple, then banned in modern, then unbanned in modern, and back to being a modern powerhouse. So Mox Opal says if you have 3 or more artifacts in play, it taps for 1 mana of any color. It counts itself, so you need 2 others. Um, this and Mox Amber are both legendary, which I didn't mention about Amber, but it just makes it less good in multiples. Both Opal and Amber were in the Breach deck in Modern and took advantage of themselves being legendary because they put themselves in the graveyard. You can cast them again. Um, I think Opal is better than Amber. You build your deck around just spewing out multiple artifacts on turn 1. That's currently something easier to do than putting a legend in play. Um, and I think it's actually good enough to be a tier above. It sees play in older formats where it's legal, and it just is a staple. It just powers up your artifact decks. People play artifact decks to be able to play Mox Opal. Um, so again, I think Mox Amber will move up over time, but for now, I think it is a tier below the other Mox. And moving forward to something that is not a Mox, we have Everflowing Chalice. This is almost an X spell. So it's 0 mana, and then it has multi kicker too. So every time you kick it, so for every 2 mana you put in, it enters with a charge counter, and then it taps equal to the charge counters. Um, I think this is a great example of just a C level card. It is super average. It is different than all the other cards we're going to talk about in that you actually do kind of have to put mana on it all the time. But there are weird decks that float around that move charge counters around. They also play Astral Cornucopia, where you can take charge counters off of some older cards and put them on this to be able to generate a lot of mana. So it has utility. You can also, if you have an Opal in play and you really need to turn it on turn 1, throw it out for 0 and just put the artifact in play. Um, but it's not something, I'm just begging to have in my deck. And it's also not something that I'm ashamed to be putting in my deck. So nice run of the mill C, especially for something that costs 0. Moving forward, Mox Diamond. It's a 0 mana non legendary artifact. When it comes in, you may discard a land. If you do discard a land, it stays in play and it taps for a mana of any color. If you don't discard a land, you have to sacrifice it. So Chrome Mox, you can choose not to pitch a card, and the Chrome Mox stays around. It just doesn't do anything. Mox Diamond, you have to pitch something. Um, that said, it always taps for any color. If you're pitching a land, you can get it back, in my opinion, easier with Ren and 6, with Ice Tail Explorer, with Ramonat Excavator, Crucible of Worlds. If you're putting a card under Chrome Mox, that card is gone. I have been of the belief that Diamond is better than Chrome. People have disagreed with me in the comments, and if you disagree, let me know in the comments. I think Mox Diamond is as good as it gets outside of the original Moxen. I just think pitching a land is such a small cost to have a Mox that taps for any color all the time. So Mox Diamond is going to be top of A. Moving forward, we have Pact of Negation. So we have the pacts here because they all cost 0. If you've never played with a pact, what it says, they all have cost 0, but at the beginning of your next upkeep, you have to pay some amount of mana or else you lose the game. So you're making a pact, So Pact of Negation is probably the best of these. It's 0 mana, counter target spell. So if you're in a pinch, you're tapped out, counter something, and then on your next upkeep, you have to pay 5 or you lose. I'm gonna put Force of Negation at the top of B, even above Mox Amber. Um, Usually, when you're running Pact of Negation in your decks, you're not looking to make it to next turn. Your next turn doesn't matter. You do this in combo decks. I'm trying to think which one specifically. You don't really do it in prime time. Um, you do it in Belcher because if you're going to Char Belcher someone, you're just planning on winning the game right here, right now. I think you do it in Oops All Spells because again, you're hoping to just flip over everything, so it shouldn't matter. Um, so the fact that it is a 0 mana counterspell in those combo decks really makes it great, but you can't play it in everything. It's just not good if you have to pay 5 the following turn. It's still fine, but it's definitely not the busted 0 mana counterspell if you have to pay for it. Moving forward, we have Jeweled Lotus. Sorry about the weird ordering of the cards that I'm ranking, but I have to be able to read what they do. I'll throw big text images up for you, but for me to be able to read them, I have to do them in this order. So Jeweled Lotus is a 0 mana artifact that taps for 3 mana. What? But this can only be used to cast your commander. And in formats that are not commander, that doesn't do anything. Now, in the format of Commander, this card is banned. So this card doesn't do anything in any format, except it has weird interactions with doubling cube. So if you double mana that's in your pool, the mana no longer has the restrictions. And people have found ways in, I think, Vintage, not Legacy, where they float some mana and then they double it and double it again, and then they have a whole bunch of mana that can be used for anything. Um, and that's a very interesting combo. I'm not going to put Jeweled Lotus all the way in F. It does have powerful applications in old formats, but it really just doesn't do what these other cards do. You can't put it in any deck and have it be fine. It is just below the bar. Moving on to a classic, we have Ornithopter, if I can find it. 0 mana, 0/2 flyer. When I was a new Magic player, I put 5, 6 of these in every single deck. I put more than the 4 because I didn't know that was a rule, and I liked playing them because it's free and a creature and blocks and is awesome. Now, all of this said, it is a 0 mana creature that blocks and flies and is awesome. You can ninjutsu things with it. You can sacrifice it to Tinker. You can tap it for your Kappa Cannoneers. It turns on your opals. It holds counters. There's so many things you can do with a 0/2 flyer. That's an artifact. So all of these are 0/2 artifacts, but this one being a creature and just being a classic, I think puts it in C tier. There's so many different ways that decks have abused it over the course of Magic. And I think it's about as average as it gets for a 0 mana card. Very good. Shout out Ornithopter. Moving forward to a card that's less generically good, we have Lion's Eye Diamond. So again, this says sacrifice it, add 3 mana of any color. But you also have to discard your hand. And discarding your hand is part of the cost, not part of the resolution. So you discard your hand, then you get the 3 mana. So you can't use it to cast a spell from your hand. So for a long time, this reserve list card wasn't that expensive. People weren't using it too much. And I remember I was playing Magic at the time when Lion's Eye Diamond shot up in price, and people were like, wait a minute, you can use flashback things. If you're going to draw some cards, you put Wheel of Fate, Wheel of Fortune on the stack. With it on the stack, you crack it, get mana, do stuff with it. Shot up in price. I opened a pack of Mirage at the time. Didn't open anything good, but that pack was older than me. And that was super fun and interesting at the local game store. Lion's Eye Diamond is only playable in older formats, and it's only good in super specific decks. But in those decks, it's the best card in your deck. I think I'm going to put it at bottom of A because it is so powerful in the decks that it's good in. And it's another card like Amber that just keeps getting better as Wizards prints more weird combos and more weird ways to do things with mana, even with an empty hand. Um, I don't see Lotus Petal becoming way more powerful over time. I could see Lion's Eye Diamond getting banned because some unintended combo comes out. So I'm going to respect that out of LED and put it up in A. Moving forward to the best card in Powered Cube by far, Zurin Orb. Zurin Orb is a 0 mana artifact, and it has an activated ability on it. The activated ability says sacrifice a land, gain 2 life. So you can sacrifice all your lands and gain life equal to the number of lands you sacrificed. There are ways to abuse this, there are ways to combo with this, and there are reasons you would want this effect. The problem I always have with the Zurin Orb is that if you want that effect, the ability to sack lands, Sylvan Safekeeper is just a better way to do it. That card costs 1 green. It's a 1/1. You sack a land, give something Shroud. I don't know why you'd want 2 life. That part of the card is almost irrelevant. It could just say sacrifice a land, look at your hand, and I think it would see the exact same amount of play. And that amount of play is not very much. I am going to put it at the bottom of D below Jeweled Lotus. I'm a Zurin Orb hater, but it has applications. People have used it in the past. Now we're going to talk about modern staple Mishra's Bauble. I think Mishra's Bauble should be banned in Modern. I don't know why. Modern gets 1 Bauble, but it doesn't get Jataxian Probe. It doesn't get, like the fact it gets 1 0 mana deck thinning spell, that's an artifact and a revolt trigger and like all the things that it is. Legacy has more than one, and they try to ban cards like this out of the format, but for some reason Bauble gets a pass. And I think it should be banned because it is just so good. So what it does, 0 mana, sack it, look at the top card of a player's library. At the beginning of the next upkeep, draw a card. So you can do shenanigans. For example, play it, look at your top card, then decide whether or not you want to crack a fetch land. That is interesting. You usually just look at your opponent's top card, know what they're going to draw, and just have some information on them. But really, it's good for all the reasons I said. It's a 0 mana artifact that replaces itself, so it's not a dead draw. You're always just going to get a new card off it. It's a prowess trigger in prowess decks. It's a revolt trigger for your fatal push. It's a void trigger if you're playing a card like that. It's an artifact from Mox Opal. You're casting an artifact for your munitions manufacturer. It just does all of these triggers, and you're just drawing a card off it, and it costs 0. So there's no reason you can't just put 4 of these in any modern deck. Really, I think silly card that is just warping in modern. If you go to Legacy, though, it doesn't get played. Like I don't think it can play up here with the big boys, but it is just so good. I'm gonna put it 1 above Lion's Eye Diamond. For all the reasons I said, Lion's Eye Diamond is so powerful in one deck in Legacy. Mishra's Bauble is so powerful in so many decks in Modern. So I'm going to give it the nod. I know I said I valued bell curves, so I might mess up the rankings here towards the end, move some things down. Moving forward to another real certified classic, we have Tormod's Crypt. So this was printed all the way back in the dark. It's been out forever. 0 mana artifact. You can sacrifice it at any time. Tap it and sacrifice it. That comes up sometimes if you're tapping it for your Kappa Cannoneers or something. But tap and sacrifice, exile, target player's graveyard. So it only hits your opponents. If you care about your stuff, it stays. And it's just been a powerful sideboard piece for as long as it's been legal. There's been a little bit power creep slash like scope creep, where it's not necessarily the choice anymore. I still use it in my burn deck because burn is so tight on mana that this is still, zero mana, get rid of your opponent's graveyard. Let's not worry about it. It's a prowess trigger for your Swift Spears. And it's just good. It's also probably still premier graveyard hate in decks that care about their own graveyard. So if you're playing Living End and your opponent's putting a whole bunch of creatures in their graveyard, you don't want a Living End into that. Well, play a Tormod's Crypt right before your Living End goes off. Exile their graveyard. You get your stuff back. You're fine. So I think this is a shoe in for B tier. Very good at what it does. Um, Definitely not broken. Happy to put it in all my modern sideboards. Moving on to a fun card, we have Spellbook. Spellbook has one sentence on it. It says, "You have no maximum hand size." Cool. I just spent a card to put this on the battlefield, so I'm probably not close to having a maximum hand size anyway. Could be fun in Commander, but it doesn't do anything other than sit there as a zero mana artifact. And other cards that sit there as a zero mana artifact are all of these. I don't see a world where this becomes playable in any format. Um, if you're drawing a bunch of cards, you usually have a plan for them. So, as fun as Spellbook is, not quite where it needs to be. My Coke is freaking out over here. Sorry about that. Next card up is Paradise Mantle. Paradise Mantle has seen play. It's a zero mana equipment, so this is our first equipment on the list. It equips for one, and equipped creature has tap, add one mana of any color. This can be a combo piece where you tap some creature that has the weird untap ability, where you tap it for a mana, pay a mana and untap it, tap it for a mana, untap it, tap it for a mana, and you can make some weird infinite mana like that. The equip cost is low. It costs 0. The artwork's really cool. It definitely has seen play, but is currently out of favor. I don't see it seeing play again unless, we are going back to Lorwyn right now. So there's a chance Wizards does some more untap shenanigans. I don't see them doing it. And until then, I don't think it's going to be particularly playable. But I'm going to put it in C tier. I think as far as zero mana artifacts go, I'm just as happy to have it as I am Everflowing Chalice. I might have put Ornithopter too low, but, who knows. Moving forward to Ornithopter's best friend, we have Memnite. Memnite is like Ornithopter, but instead of being a 0-2 flyer, it's a 1-1. So you get a power, you lose a toughness, and it doesn't get flying anymore. I think it's worse. When I was a kid, I used to think it was better because it could attack. Now I think it's worse. It doesn't block as well, and you can't get in with it and do ninjutsu-y weird things. It doesn't hold a sword well, The flying is pretty important on Ornithopter, and I think Memnite, because of that, is significantly worse. I don't think it's a tier worse. It still does all the things that Ornithopter does, just not quite as well. Moving forward, we have some kobolds. So we'll start with Rograk. I have a Rograk commander deck, but it's a 0 mana 0-1 creature with partner, so that only matters in commander. But it's a 0 mana creature that's a 0-1 with first strike, menace, and trample. I think it's a fun card because you got to figure out what to do with that. And the answer on what to do with that is load it up with stuff, counters, enchantments, equipment, whatever you want to put on it. It then becomes great at holding. My commander deck I have built around it puts all the equipments on it. I have all the swords of X and Y's, and I put them all on them, and I get in, and it's fun. In competitive formats, doesn't see any play outside of I think CEDH, because he has partner. You can just add red to anything, and you can play him for 0, and then all of your wills are online. The free spells that you can, if you have your commander, the spell's free. He's a 0 mana commander. All your spells are free. But outside of that, in normal, again, Commander's a perfectly normal and perfectly fun. I like Commander. But in the 60 card formats, it doesn't do anything. I'm going to put it. Ooh, but wait. It's legendary, so it turns on your Mox Ambers. I'm going to put it in D tier for this reason. And the other reason is that we have Korbald Friends coming up, which I don't have their names pulled up, so we'll have to talk about them here in a second. Moving on, we have Phyrexian Walker. Phyrexian Walker is a 0 mana 0/3. That's it. So Ornithopter is a 0/2 with flying. Memnite's a 1/1. And this is a 0/3. It was printed back in Visions, so it's not really legal in anything. And that's really hurting its competitive case. I think it's better than Memnite. It doesn't have Defender, so you can still attack with it. It blocks way better than Memnite. Block 2/2s all day long, you know? Holds negative counters if you need it to. I think it's better than Memnite, right in the same tier. Doesn't do anything in any formats, but that's a legality problem. If it was legal in the same formats as Memnite, I don't think Memnite would see any play. Moving up, we have Urza's Bauble. This is another Bauble. This one says you sacrifice it, look at a random card from your opponent's hand, and then at the beginning of the next upkeep, draw a card. So I used to think it was like better than Mishra's Bauble. Now I probably think it's worse. You always see their next card. This when you see a random card. If they're empty-handed, you don't see anything. Mishra's Bauble, you can look at your own top card and choose to fetch. Maybe Urza's Bauble is better. Turn one, just see something in their hand. If you see a land, they're just going to play that land. It's interesting. Not modern legal. Very impactful for competitive play. I'm trying actually not to have that be what this ranking's about. So I'm gonna put it at the top of B. I think it's just like pretty on par with Mishra's Bauble, just a little worse. And again, the modern nod. My bias is creeping in. So that's just what I'm gonna do with that. Next up, we have Welding Jar. 0 mana artifact. It has an ability, sacrifice an artifact, or sacrifice itself. Sacrifice Welding Jar, regenerate target artifact. I'm pretty sure this used to see play in KCI because your Crack Clan Ironwork was so important that you needed it out. So you'd play this for redundancy. And I think this will continue to cycle in and out of play in Modern over the next decade. 0 is what you want to be paying for spells. And if you just have a super important artifact that you need on the board, play this out, play out the artifact, and you just have a layer of protection. It means they have to counter the artifact if they want to keep it off. One removal spell won't cut it. And I just think it's good. I think it's probably top of C. It might be bottom of B tier level. But yeah, I just think it's real good. Especially, again, if you have one artifact you built around. Moving forward, we have another pact. This is the other pact that sees play, and that sees a lot of play. Summoner's Pact. 0 mana instant. Search your library for a green creature, put it into your hand, and then you lose the game on your next upkeep unless you pay 4. So this is a linchpin of Primeval Titan decks in Modern. You play this, you go get your Prime Time. Then you play your Prime Time, get more lands in play, and you start doing your Primeval Titan Amulet combo. If you don't win the game this turn, on your next turn, you're probably going to have 50 mana in play, so paying 4 isn't going to matter. Outside of that, Summoner's Pact doesn't see any play, to my knowledge. I think it is a worse card than Pact of Negation. It is less versatile, less flexible, and less powerful. That said, it is the staple card in probably the best deck in Modern. I'm of the opinion that Primetime has been the best deck in Modern for 5 years, and it still is. People just don't know how to play it, myself included. I tried recently and I got swept, but I wasn't clicking the right buttons, even though I could have. So I think Summoner's Pact, honestly, I'm going to put it right above Chalice. Um, it's only good in Primeval Titan, and I wouldn't want to see it in any other deck. I'd rather have an Ornithopter than a Summoner's Pact in 99% of decks. Moving forward, we have Jeweled Amulet. So here's a reason I have the side thing up. So, 0 mana artifact. You can pay 1 and tap it and put a charge counter on the amulet. And you note the type of mana spent when you put it on. So if you used white mana, you put a white charge counter or whatever. And then another ability, you can tap it and remove a charge counter and add 1 mana of the last noted color to your pool. So if you pay a white in, then you pay a blue in, then you pay a red in. If you want to take one out, it'll be a red. Then if you want to take another one out, it'll still be a red because that was the last noted. It's just a mana battery thing. It's interesting because on turn 1, you play untapped land, amulet, charge up the amulet. On turn 2, you play second land, cast a 3-drop. On turn 3, you cast another 3-drop. And I think that's pretty good. It's not a Mox, but it's pretty good. I mean, it's not legal really in much, but it reads powerful to me. Mainly if you have it on turn 1 and charge it up on turn 1. Now, if you're doing that with your first turn, you're not casting good spells. And in these old formats, the 1 mana spells are very important. So I've actually talked myself down off of it. I'd rather just cast a Delver of Secrets or a Ragavan or whatever. I think it's better than Jewel Lotus. Definitely better than Zurin Orb. Definitely better. So I'll toss it in D tier. No, it's better than that. I'm just trying to think. Like this is a hard one to rank because it doesn't see a lot of play a lot of places. I'll put it at the top of C. I think it's generically better than all of these cards. I don't think it's generically better than Crypt. So I think that's where I like it. Moving on to, I think, our last Mox, and the newest Mox, Mox Jasper. It's a 0 mana legendary artifact, and it taps to add a color among dragons you control. So you have to control a dragon. Fun fact about dragons tend to be expensive. They printed, I think, a 1 mana dragon. Might have been 2, but I think they printed a 1 mana dragon since this card came out, and that was a pretty big deal because it makes this card better. And just like Mox Amber, this card gets better over time as more and more dragons get printed. Particularly, probably in Commander products. That's where I foresee them printing aggressively costed dragons, more likely. But for now, it's really just not there. I'm going to put it below Jewel Lotus, above Zurin Orb, because Zurin Orb is terrible. I don't know why Rograk. Zurin Orb is bad. I hate Zurin Orb. But it has potential to move up over the years. Lots of potential. Moving on to another 0 mana creature, we have Shield Sphere. This is a 0 mana 0/6 with Defender, and whenever it blocks, put a -0/-1 counter on it. So we don't use those counters anymore. And whenever it blocks, so if you attack with a 5/5 and it blocks for the first time, it'll die because it'll get the counter and get the 5 damage. If you attack with a 3/3 and it has 2 already, again, it'll take the 3 damage and get the counter put on and it'll die. So it'll block 3 times, maybe 4 times. That's good. It's probably not better than any of these. I'd rather have a Memnite and this 0/3 that can attack and doesn't shrink. But it's good. It's a wall. It's a 0/6 wall for 0. So in weird wall decks, you get 6 toughness for 0. Seems good in your commander attack with your walls decks. Moving on to another pact that I think has seen modern play in the past. We have Slaughter Pact. So Pact is 0 mana, destroy target non-black creature. The non-black, I feel like, if this card was printed today, would not have that clause. You know, Pact of Negation doesn't say counter target non-blue spell, but counter target non-black or destroy target non-black creature, and then at the beginning of your next upkeep, you have to pay 3. So it's the cheapest uh, packed price to pay. Whew. But the effect isn't great. I would say the effect is better than Summoner's Pact baseline. You know, if Pact wasn't getting prime time every time and doing the weird combo thing, I think Slaughter Pact is better. Um, that said, not by much. Um, I think I'll put it. I think I'll just put it one above Summoner's Pact. I think it's slightly better. Ornithopter, love. But okay. Moving on to the next card, we have another 0 mana equipment, Bone Saw. 0 mana, equip 1. Where did it go? 0 mana, equip 1. Equipped creature gets +1/+0. It's fine. It's not good. I'd rather have probably Paradise Mantle. I think I'd rather have an Ornithopter just as a creature. If they end up doing weird equipment things, sacrificing equipment to go get an equipment, for example, or if there's some huge payoff for having lots of equipment equipped to a creature, this card becomes interesting. It's the cheapest way to put out an equipment and equip it, you know, other than Paradise Mantle. Um, but it's kind of just meh right now. I think it's the top of D, but I don't think any of the cards above it are worse than it. Next card we have is Claws of Gix. So this card costs 0 and has an activated ability. Sacrifice a permanent, you gain a life. Well, hold on. That's insane. Sacrifice your artifacts, your creatures, your everything, your lands. It's like Zeranorb, but better. No. It's 1 mana. Sacrifice a permanent, gain a life. So you can sacrifice anything you want. Creatures in your aristocrats decks, artifacts in weird artifact builds, lands if you're trying to do the Zeranorb thing. But every time you do it, you have to pay a mana. And that is a steep cost. Zeranorb is good because if you play a Titania and tap out for it, you have 5 tapped lands. Play the Zeranorb's already in play. Without paying any more, you sack all your lands and the thing happens. So the combo ability of Claws of Gix isn't there. It is just value churning better. You know, in Commander, if you're just playing a weird aristocrat deck that also wants to be able to sacrifice artifacts and also wants to be able to sacrifice lands, this will do it all for you. But the 1 mana is really pretty killer. I'm going to put it in F tier. It's probably not that bad. It might be D tier. But I don't know. The 1 mana really makes me wary about putting it higher. Next up, we have another equipment. This is a 0 mana equipment. It equips for 3. Yikes. And it says equipped creature gets +0/+3 and has vigilance. This card I'm pretty comfortable putting in F tier. I think I'll even put it below Spellbook. Spellbook at least gives you upside. Equip 3 is steep. You know, for 3, I could be playing a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. You know, I could be playing good equipment like a sword. I could be casting a divination. You know, there's so many things you can do for 3 mana. That is too high of an equip cost just to give +0/+3 in vigilance. This is just a kind of nothing card. Worst card we've talked about so far, in my opinion. Moving on, we have Cathar's Shield. Now, this card is interesting. This is a 0 mana equipment, and it says equipped creature gets +0/+3 and has vigilance, and it equips for 3. It's the same card. They printed it twice with different names for no reason. Card's not good. So we're flushing out F tier here in quick succession. Moving on, we have Darksteel Relic, and this card's fun and interesting. I'm a big fan of this card. It's a 0 mana artifact that has indestructible, and that is just the whole card. So the question is, what do you do with it? And I think that's a fun, interesting question. You put counters on it with a Tezzeret Ultimate. You now have an indestructible creature you can attack with. You have Animate Artifact. You have Install Artifact. You have, they printed a card just recently in Avatar. You destroy an artifact or land. This one says an opponent controls, and they go get a land. But if they ever, power creep it again, if you destroy this and go get a land, well, it's not going to get destroyed, so you can keep doing it. Great build around piece that I find very interesting. That said, I can't think of things it can do that these shields couldn't do. If I'm going to put counters on it and attack, I could do that with a shield. The shield doesn't have indestructible, but the shield does have other applications. You can equip it. You can't equip this relic. But I think it's fun. I think it's good. So I'm going to put it above Zurin Orb. That's just where I'm going to put it arbitrarily because I hate Zurin Orb. It's probably not as good as that, but very interesting. One day it may be the top of the list. Who knows? There are 3 of this card. I only brought in 1. There's Korbalds of Carekeep, Crookshank Kobolds, and Crimson Kobolds. They're all 0 mana 0/1s. And that's just their whole text. So here's a 0 mana 0/1 with lots of abilities, and it's legendary, and it has partner. This is a 0 mana 0/1. I'd rather have it than these dinky artifacts. I'd rather have Spellbook probably. Very much not good. Yeah. 0 mana 0/1 doesn't do it for me. Moving on, we have Herbal Poultice? Poultice. My eyes are bad. I don't know how to pronounce that. 0 mana artifact. Pay 3 and sacrifice it. Regenerate target creature. 3 is really high to pay. So what's good about Welding Jar is you pay it, or you put it in play for 0, and you just get to hold it up forever. I will always be able to regenerate an artifact whenever I want. This, you have to hold up 3 to regenerate a creature once. That just is not good. And it doesn't have indestructible. So it's got to be worse than that. I'm going to put it down here, and I'm going to move the claw up, I think. It just isn't strong. It doesn't do anything. Moving up to the next one, we have Kite Shield. And Kite Shield is like these other shields. It's 0 mana equipment, equips for 3. Equipped creature gets +0/+3. Does not give vigilance. So it is strictly worse than these other cards. Can I add a row? How do I do that? How do I add a row? Control A. F-. This card is so bad. It's even worse than these, and these are terrible. So yeah, it's going down there all by itself. Don't play it. Coming up next, we have Fountain of Youth. 0 mana artifact. You can pay 2 and tap it to gain a life. I'm going to use that more often than Kite Shield. If I'm playing a weird life gainy deck, and I just want to be able to gain a life whenever I want, there you go. maybe one day in some world there's a combo where whenever you gain life, untap an artifact. Um, and if that becomes a thing, if you have infinite mana, you can like gain a life, gain a life, gain a life. It has more potential than these weird things. Um, that said, it's definitely down here. I think it's better than regenerate. I think it's better than max hand size. Yeah, I think just F tier is probably where it goes. Um, Next up, we have Dark Sphere from the Dark. 0 mana, tap sack to prevent half of the damage done to you by a single source rounded down. Getting attacked for 5, it'll prevent 2 of it. It only prevents damage that would be dealt to you, the player. So what? 0 mana, tap it, sack it, gain 2, gain 3. If they attack with Merit Lage, gain 10, fine. Really, really not good. Better than these shields. Not better than a 0/1. It appears as though the list that I'm looking at might have actually kind of already been ranked top down. Because we're getting some real stinkers here at the end. Moving on to Guthda's Scepter. 0 mana. You can tap it and exile a card from your hand face down, and you can look at it. And then you can tap it to return a card that you removed from the game to your hand. And if you were to ever lose control of it, so if it left the battlefield or they owned it, you put all the cards you've exiled under it into your graveyard. So what is this doing? If you were to tap it, put a card under it, tap it, put a card under it, next turn you cast a wheel, draw up 7, tap it, you get one of the cards back. That's what it can do. That is not good. I'd rather have a 0/1. I would not rather have this sphere, but yeah, that is not very good. Next up, we have Lodestone Bauble. So another bauble. 0, sacrifice it. Pay 1 and sacrifice it. Pay 1. Pay 1 and sacrifice it. Put up to 4 target land cards. Basic land cards. So not fetches. 4 basic lands from a player's graveyard on top of his or her library in any order. That player draws a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So, my thought, is you put 4 basics on their deck and then you draw a card. But you don't draw a card, they draw it. So, it's really only good if you're putting basics from your own graveyard in top and then you're drawing. But you paid a mana to do that, and you're drawing a basic that had to already be in your graveyard. This card's really bad. I'd rather have the shields. Not this shield. This shield is terrible. I'd rather have these shields. Getting close to the end here. Since we're getting close to the end, I'm just gonna say, if you like this video, please like it or comment. I'm gonna do some re-ranking at the end to try to make it a better distribution. But if you disagree with anything, maybe think Mishra's Bauble should be S. Let me know in the comments. I read all my comments and I try to reply to all of them. And if you want to see something else ranked, I downloaded this new tier list software that makes making these videos easier for me, and they're fun. So if you have something you'd like to see ranked, let me know in the comments. Moving on to our next 0 mana card, Delif's Cone. I kept wanting to read Delphi. Delif's Cone, 0 mana. You can tap and sack it. If target creature you control attacks and is not blocked, instead of dealing damage, you can gain that much life. Okay. So, if you have a creature that is getting in, and instead of dealing 4, you want to gain 4, this can do that for you. You have to sacrifice it to do it. It's better than the shields. You don't have to pay mana. I think it's I think it's better than the Dark Sphere. Yeah, I'm gonna put it up here. Call me crazy. Very important F tier ranking going on, but I think it's up here. Um, Going on, we have Intervention Pact, 0 mana, white instant. The next time a source of your choice would deal damage, you prevent it and you gain the life instead. This one is way more interesting. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you pay 1 and 2 white, or you lose the game. So it actually is its cheapest Slaughter Pact. I didn't know this card existed. So if you're playing Prowess and Modern, and they have two, um, what's that card called? Slick Shot Show Offs coming at you, you can prevent one of them from dealing damage and gain that much life instead, which pretty much fogs them both. Then on your next turn, you can pay 3 and be alive. Now, you're probably not recovering because you have to pay 3, but it's better than this F tier. I could see this sneaking its way into Modern, if I'm being completely honest. I think I'm going to put it top of D. I think that card has legs. Um, Prime time, if you're attacking me with a 20/20, and like that's your goal, is like this turn I have to deal 20 to you. Not anymore. Um, yeah, Charbelcher. This is just a hard counter for Goblin Charbelcher. You just, instead of taking 60, you gain 60. And it's 0 mana. Um, yeah, no, I think this card has legs. Uh, yeah, no, I think this card could actually be really good. I'm moving it up to C. I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it here, and I'm gonna move Chalice down below Paradise Mantle. I think that card's actually pretty good. Pact of the Titan, 0 mana, instant, create a 4/4. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you have to pay 5. This card's less good. We know exactly what this card is going to do. If they attack with something, make a 4/4 block, upkeep, you have to pay 5. 5 mana 4/4, not that good, even if you're getting that free block out of it. 5 mana 4/4 is better than Bonesaw, I'll tell you that. It's 5 mana 4/4. I'd rather have a 5 mana 4/4 than all these cards. And finally, we've made it to the last card on the list. Somehow I've missed it on my list over here, but it is a 0 mana equipment. And equipped creature gets +0/+2 and has reach. So it's not given vigilance, and it's not given that third toughness, but it equips for 2 instead of 3. That is a big deal. Equipping for 2 honestly puts it all the way up to like top of F, I think. Yeah, I think it's better than all these cards. So there you have it. I'm gonna do a little shuffle here with tiers, and I think that looks like dropping Mishra's Bauble, adding Amulet, moving Net up, moving this up, moving Pact up, moving. I'm gonna move Spellbook up, and then moving Bonesaw up. I think that is the curve I'm comfortable with. So A tier or S tier, we have the original Moxen, Mana Crypt, and Black Lotus. No surprises. A tier starts with Mox Diamond, ends with LED. B tier starts with Mishra's Bauble, ends with Jeweled Amulet. C tier goes from Welding Jar to Bonesaw. D tier goes from Sphere of Safety to Spellbook. F tier goes from whatever this card is, Herbal Polis to Lodestone Bauble, and F minus tier is the, I don't even want to think about it, Kite Shield all by itself. So if you made it this far, please leave a comment, leave a like. I really like making the tier list videos, and I just like making videos in general. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.